the group has been together for quite a long time. Originally, I think a lot of them started as doing crafts for as fundraisers for the church, and some of them did quilting. Since we've been working at the state fair, the group has kind of expanded into taking in people who are not necessarily members of our church and who are who love to quilt.
Well, my mother quilted, like everybody's mother, I guess. But I didn't quilt with her. I was around the quilts and everything, and when I got interested in quilting, I guess I was probably in my 20s or 30s and put some quilts together. And then she belonged to a group, like, a church group, and they quilted my quilts. So I really didn't start quilting till, probably 60s or something, like 70s.
I quilted with my mother. She quilted too, and I was never really very good. I wasn't good enough for her to quilt on her. I'm sure if I put any stitches in her quilt, she may have taken them out later, which was all right. And my grandmothers both quilted.
Well, when I was about, I think I was about 30 years old, our church burnt. I don't go to this church. I go to a church in Warrenton, Indiana. Our group, or our church people, separated into groups to raise money to rebuild the church. So one morning, and it was on Wednesday, I went to be with the group, and I had a choice. I could pick strawberries that morning, or I could learn to quilt.
I haven't heard this.
So I said, I think this would be a good time to learn to quilt. So they let me sit down and work at it, and that's how I got started, and I really loved it.
Well, I must be an oddball around here. I surely am. My mother, nor my grandmother, did not quilt. But the year I was 14 and I lived in the country, could not get a job, had to be home all summer, my mother said, "You will make a quilt." And I did, and I still have it. And I did that for 3 summers. I only have 2 of those 3 quilts. But then I went to college, and I got married, I raised children, I worked, but through all this, I did occasionally do some quilting.
Well, I have been quilting most of my life at my grandmother's quilt frame, and then it was in about 1982 when I visited the state fair and to the Pioneer Building, and there are all these nice crafts there, but no quilters. So I applied for the job and for this group, and we've been going ever since, and we've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Some people are better at putting colors together. Other people are better at choosing designs. And a lot of it is repetition too.
By working together, we each learn a new something on every quilt we do, whether it's sewing or quilting or what. We try new designs, we have problems, we work them out, and then it's put up for sale at the auction.
And, as far as what I do toward the quilt, I quilt. I let them make all the decisions, and when they're done with all their decisions and get it all together, then I quilt.
We have found out in putting these quilts together for the state fair auction that one person cuts and another person sews. If everybody gets involved in doing cutting, we get different size pieces that don't fit together, and so we've kind of figured out that one cuts, one sews, and then we all quilt.
It's just another form of artistic expression, I guess you could call that, because I think quilting is an art, and putting a quilt together is an art, putting the colors together and the designs and being able to see it in your mind before it actually happens.
I think the stitches are probably one of the most important things, and that's what we do. But putting the colors together, and finding out that maybe brown doesn't go so well, or some other color doesn't go so well, so we'll trade that for something else. And there's a lot of things too. You can't just walk in and sit down and say, hey, I can do this. You may not be able to do that. There's a lot of knowledge in it that you just learn as you go along, or you can read a book and get it out, but it's better hands-on. Hands-on is better.
The quilting will take in excess of 200 hours if one person did it. And so there's a lot of work in this, and then when we want to sell it, people say, well, why are quilts so expensive? Well, if you quilted for 200 hours, what is your hour worth? And what should we sell it for? And so that's why quilts are expensive. That does not count the time, first of brain power, just to figure out what we're going to make, which took several
2 or
months.
3 months this time.
Yeah,
about 3 months.
and then the gathering fabrics, cutting it out, sewing it together, and putting this all together. There's a lot of work in making a queen-size quilt.
I was invited to be one of the people to go to the state fair, and that's about as addictive as quilting. To go to the state fair in the Pioneer Village, because it is great fun. That's like a big family up there too.
When we first started going up there, was when Minnie first started going. The bathrooms were crude. The beds were sprung. The springs were sprung, and the mattresses were about this thick.
They were called hammocks in a frame.
And you had to stand in line for a shower, and by the time you sit all day in 100 degrees of heat, you can't wait to get to the shower. But somehow or other, it was always fun. We always had a good time. There was a lot of things to go on up there, and you just get into a mode, I guess it is, that everything is turned back, the clock's turned back, and everything is yesterday.
The first time I quilted at the state fair was in 1982 or 3. That's because my daughter was involved in 4-H, and she was there, so I sat in quilted. I worked during the summers, and it was in 1990 when my husband retired, and then I started coming to the state fair. Well, first you come for a couple days. It's an addiction just to be a part of this. It's like going to band camp when you go to the state fair, because for 2 weeks of your life, you're someone else. And we just have a great time. There are many, many artisans at the state fair. I envy the talents of so many of our state fair pioneer family.
We just finished a quilt class that this group taught. There was some interest expressed about some quilt lessons. So after the first of the year, our group taught, how many do we have? About 11 ladies.
Well, 11, one's a grade schooler.
Yeah, one was still in grade school, and then young mothers.
They were all ages.
So we're trying to get some interest, with some younger ladies.
As far as our group is concerned, it is a fun group. It's a therapy group. It's something I love to do. It's peaceful, it's comforting, it's a sharing. When you make a quilt and somebody you love wraps up in it, you feel very satisfied.
We just feel like we're each other's best friends. The way I feel. It's the way I feel. It's a wonderful group. And we're all close to the same age, so we all have about the same complaints. Or aches. Aches and pains. And I don't know, it's just a wonderful group. I think that I would be less of a person if I wasn't here.